It's 10:08 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. And you're on Ask the Author.
And this is Rabbi Shafir Loeb of Congregation Eitz Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. And it is a beautiful Friday morning.
Boy, isn't it?
And the weather says that it's only going to reach the mid-80s today, so,
And the humidity is
be the
down?
same. Yeah.
Well, it's down a little.
It's down a little bit.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah,
That's
but
true.
supposedly we're supposed to have nights in the 60s. Ooh.
That'll be chilly.
Yeah, it'll be chilly.
That'll be chilly.
Well, we can always head out after the show and go to Lake Tahoe, and weather is in the teens tonight.
That's nice. They can keep it. I'll take San Diego, thank you.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, me too. Yep, no doubt about it.
When all else fails, San Diego is 72.
That's it. That's it. It's either 72 and foggy or 72 and partly cloudy.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Yep, that's so true. So how did it go with the High Holy Days?
It went beautifully. Sharon did an amazing job of singing with us, and it was nice. And I did something different this year that I haven't done before. One of the things that I have wanted, and we did it actually for COVID, we actually showed the reading of the Torah during the chanting. During but of course live it's different. So we grabbed Mr. Mevo, as we call him, or it. It's actually an it, but we call it Mr. Mevo for whatever reasons. Got to genderize things, right?
I was going to say it's rather sexist, but that's okay.
And manhandled the beast and pointed him down at the Torah, and people actually got to watch while I read.
That's so cool.
So,
yeah, well,
yeah.
It works.
Technology is different. So, yeah, it was kind of cool. There was a little bit of watching the floor as we got it positioned, but it was definitely live and streamed. So if you want to see that, see our Torah being read, and it was kind of cool.
Nice.
So we'll probably do that again for Yom Kippur. And for those who are coming to Yom Kippur, if you haven't heard, we actually had somebody who went to our old location. We are at 295 Northwest Prima Vista Boulevard, and we will be, for Yom Kippur, we will be in the Fellowship Hall. Of course, for tonight and Friday nights, we're in the Community Center, which is the first building you hit. The Fellowship Hall, you turn right and go to the back of the building, and the entrance is over there. There's two entrances into the Fellowship Hall.
Yeah, well, that's very cool. Yeah, you're no longer by Met Stadium. So.
Right. Yeah, we don't have to deal with football games and baseball games.
I was going to say, yeah. And marching.
Or soccer games.
And marching bands in the middle of your ceremony.
That happened. We
I
heard them.
know. At Vero Beach, we were doing that game, and I'm thinking, oh, the poor rabbi. The poor rabbi. And Vero's got a band of about 250 kids. And I was thinking, oh, no.
Yeah, we occasionally hear that. We occasionally hear fireworks over there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, whatever. And that's just part of life. The challenge. The first time I saw that was like, oh, my gosh, so many people are coming to services tonight? Until I came in and realized that they were parking from the sports complex over by us.
Illegally, but that's, yeah.
But they don't ticket them, so they do it.
No, yeah. So, Sharon's bunch out of Tucson, I guess she was lucky to be here, huh?
Yes, she was. That worked out really quite well for her.
The ugly sea came back and bit the choir.
Yes. COVID is around, folks.
Oh, yeah, it is.
And we are spacing in the sanctuary because we can between people. We're not jamming people in like sardines, and we're purposely doing that. We're looking, we probably could fit in the Friday night space, but we're not doing that. We're opening it up because Yom Kippur is a little bit bigger, and so we'll be in this huge space where there'll be more than enough room.
I get it. Hey, believe me, I get it.
And
Being a dinosaur, I mean, it's tough on us old folks.
I understand. And, so we space things. We've always spaced things. That's actually, I think, one of the reasons why, knock wood, we were very lucky as a congregation that during the shutdown, although family members of members contracted COVID, nobody in the actual congregation, and we never had people coming to services and getting infected.
That's good.
So the people who did, eventually people did come down with it, like on a cruise. One of our members was on a cruise and contracted it there from her sister. So, yeah.
It's out there.
It's
I
out there.
It's just there. Yeah.
Well, and I was thinking about that actually this morning, that it's going to replace the H1N1 probably. Right. So it's going to be the new flu, which is actually what somebody sitting in this chair said a couple 3 years ago that it would do. And that is what it's doing. And that is what happens with viruses. They replace each other as they go through new.
That's interesting.
The newer one seems to be able to take over the dominant infection. And it's an interesting thing because viruses are not alive the way we think of life being. They're not a cell. They don't have any cognitive thought. Their only drive is to replicate. They're little bits of DNA, RNA from our cells that hijack our cells, that get into the cell to use the cell's reproduction capabilities. So they affect, if you will, mutations. And they don't really want to kill the host, but again, they're not thinking. And it just works out that way that depending on which cells they attack, you kind of need your lungs and liver and things like that. And the more cells they infect, the less likely it is that you'll be able to fight them off and get them out of your body. But that's what the vaccine does, is it actually teaches our immune system how to recognize the foreign substance and differentiate it from the part of us that's normal.
That's amazing.
Someday we'll probably have a cancer vaccine that'll do the same thing, that'll recognize that sequence of chemicals and molecules that generates the cancer growth. The problem is that there's so many of them that it's not just one. And so teaching the body how to deal with it is just not easy.
I remember Dr. Salk was talking at one point, and this goes back a lot of years, and Carol and I were
Your double hockeys are
in
showing.
San Diego. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And he was talking about hopefully, that they would lick polio, but cancer he hoped would be next. And I was thinking, wow.
But you know what?
40 years ago.
That was, and we have made tremendous progress. The other thing to realize, and folks, this is just reality, everything that is alive will someday die. And that's just the reality of life.
Okay.
Right? All of us have an expiration date. It's marked on our foreheads in invisible ink. We can't see it. We can't see each other's. But each of us is only on the earth for so many days or years or whatever. And the key is to enjoy that time healthily, to contribute to the planet, to the species, do something worthwhile, and enjoy the ride. Because it's not an infinite ticket. And that doesn't mean that it's sad. You just need to live every day. Every day needs to be a source of some kind of joy for you. And if it's not, get some help. Get some help to get there. Don't hijack somebody, but get some help to get there. And that's the key. And when we do that, then all of us will be better and healthier. It's, how can I say, other countries talk more about it than we do in America. In America, we've got this death avoidance behavior. We hush it. We don't talk to children about it. We don't teach children how to grieve. We don't ask kids when the bike is broken or stolen or damaged, how does that feel? What can you do to deal with that feeling? We don't ask kids those questions. And I think that's a critical question. We need to do that. Right? We just need to do that. And we need to make that work for people because it can.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, if you will, a bottom line. It absolutely can. So, yeah, I used to be a chaplain in hospice, and I can tell you that the key of hospice is not all about dying. It's about living those days, about being comfortable, about being happy in the day. There's a wonderful lecture out there by a guy named Randy Pausch. I just finished teaching Death and Dying. Actually, today's the last day of the class of the term for Kaiser, and the class was Death and Dying. And so has really had me think about that, because that's part of what Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur is about. It puts in your face that point that none of us lives forever, and none of us knows when we're going to die. So you plan as if you're going to live forever, but you live as if it's your last day.
Yeah, realistically.
Realistically. And so in the course of the 25 hours of Yom Kippur, because it starts a little early and ends a little bit late to make sure we bracket those 24 hours safely, the invitation is to think about what it would be if this was your last day. What do you want people to remember you for? What do you want to contribute? How do you want to make your life matter? Because that's really the end goal, is that the life you live did something positively for others, not negatively. You know, you can absolutely have a negative impact. That's easy. The challenge is to do it lovingly, helpfully, even when it's not as totally pleasant as it could be.
I get that. Yeah.
I was watching a very interesting video that was it was actually part of this class, and it was, every country has slightly different, and every religion and culture and tradition has slightly different death culture things. And this one was really interesting. This was a Malay video about washing the person as they get close to the end. When you know that they've only got a week or less to live, they actually do a very beautiful body washing with the person, talking to them and telling them, you know, we're going to wash your hair, and they wash the hair, and then they comb it and they dry it, and they put them in nice clothing. And they're still in a diaper, because one of the things as you get close is that you can't control that part of your body anymore. But that's handled very, very nicely, very sympathetically. And they get dressed in beautiful clothing and laid into a nice bed for their last few days. And you see a lot less restlessness. It in some ways, it's giving them permission to say, hey, this is the end, and we know it, and we're preparing, and we love you.
Get ready for the transition.
Get ready for the transition. And it's so dignified, and it's so beautiful and so loving, and there's a team that comes in and does this. The family doesn't do it. They can participate if they want, but they're not expected to, and it's done for the person who's dying. And there was really a very interesting interview at the end of it. They interviewed the lead nurse who runs this, and her big piece about, they asked her, why do you do it? This has got to be really hard when your training is to prolong life, and here you are easing the way out. And she said, I didn't get to do that for my grandmother. I wasn't there for her, and so I do it for everyone that I can, so that she can smile at me.
That makes sense.
And, you know, just the power of that, huge, huge. And you could see that doing this service for others helped her recognize that others had done it for her grandmother. And it's another form of paying it forward. And there is an absolute value in that. It's what we're designed as human beings to be and to do, is to help each other. And it doesn't really matter what that's about. but it's about helping. It's about positive contributions to our families, to ourselves, to our families, to each other, to our cities, our states, our countries, the planet. You can take it however big you want to take it. And it makes a huge difference. If everybody did something nice every single day, imagine how wonderful the world could be. You know?
I remember Carol talking to her mom on literally her last day.
Wow.
And she looked at Carol and addressed her as her sister, who had passed maybe 25 years earlier.
It is common for people at very end stages as they're transitioning. So hospice people talk about the transition. The transition is from daily living to actively dying. That's the transition. That's the first transition. And in that transition, as people get close to it, it is very common to see deceased relatives and friends. It's very, very common. Sometimes it's overlaid over somebody who's there, as was the case with Carol. Sometimes they just see them sitting in the chair next to them. And whether that's a welcome, I don't know. I've just seen it, and when it's acknowledged and allowed to happen, then it's very peace-giving. There is some communication that needs to happen. However, that I don't pretend to know. That's one of the rabbis don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We know something happens, but we're not entirely sure exactly how that looks. Right? Our tradition says that we are all made of God stuff, if you will, star stuff. Right? We're all made of God stuff, and that the parts of us go back to the source, return to the source. The Hindus say it's like a drop in the ocean. That's an interesting way to look at it. I'm not sure. You know, there's a lot of different allegories that talk about it, and the thing that's powerful for me is that when you cut it all back, every tradition talks about it in some way. And right, the ultimate punishment, if you will, is to not be able to do that, to not return to the source. That, if you will, is the fear. It's not fire and brimstone. It's just you don't get to, and candidly, I have to believe that the souls that warrant that have just work to do before they're reunited, because I can't believe that God doesn't want to be whole. And so I'm not sure how that works, but that's maybe my ego, but I would think I want to be whole. I would imagine that since I'm in God's image, that perhaps that's some dilution of what God wants. Right? If God, Jewish tradition says that God, and we'll actually talk about this Sunday night and Monday, how God contracts God's self in order to create the space that allows for the universe. And in doing that, God had to have a reason. It's just, it's unfathomable to think of God as acting like a virus. Okay. It just doesn't work that way for me. So I have to imagine that when we're taught that it's in God's image, that contraction is somehow serving something that God doesn't have without it. And I think that that's love, because love is just such a unique, when it's real, when it's felt, it's one of the best emotions that we've got. That feeling of, wow. I'm connected to another soul at a deep, deep level. And when it's love when you want the best for them, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it's love. And right. And it's just gorgeous. It just is. And so I have to believe that that's what God wants us to experience, because God wants to experience it. And God wants to be loved. And I think that when we love God, and that's the instruction, right? V'ahavta, you shall love God. And Jesus teaches it to Christians, so it's not a surprise. And the Hindus say, when you pass into the world of love, that's when your life is meaningful. I'm paraphrasing, but it's in all religions that there's this connection this positive connection. And when that happens, then we're helping the planet, we're being healthier, it's filled with positive energy. Now the other side to that is you can't live there. You can't live in that moment. We call it Atzilut, when you're at one with God. And you can't live there because we live in the real world, not in the spiritual world. And so we do have to go, water the garden and till the crops and yank those weeds and throw them somewhere else. And
well, and it's interesting to me that, after 18 years of Catholic education, that it seems like the Buddhists and the Hindus are a far deeper.
They're a very deeply spiritual
religion.
They're a very, very deep spiritual religion.
It's amazing. I mean, and of course, obviously, as you've talked about, go back thousands of years. Yeah.
And some of those ideas did travel up and down the Silk Road.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I have talked about Zoroastrian influences. And they're still around. They're just not as numerous as they were because of not so much Christian conversion as Muslim conversion.
Oh. Huh. I never thought
Thank you,
about
Mongols.
that. Yeah? Okay.
Right.
Huh.
An interesting group of people.
Huh.
And the descendants of some of the more famous Mongols are very, very numerous. He was very prolific.
Okay.
Yeah, the people who have those markers are numerous. There are many. And so along with that, though, of course, came ideas up and down that Silk Road. And so at one level, yes, it's interesting and surprising that we share so many very deep concepts. And at another level, it's really not surprising because we talked about them, we traded them, we discussed them, and the pieces that made sense stuck. The pieces that served life stuck. They may have gotten twisted and changed and reformed, but those concepts were in there. The piece that I really think about sometimes is Rabbi Nachman of Breslov talks about the world being a very narrow bridge. And he's talking about the transition from life to death to life everlasting. And that's a Zoroastrian concept.
Whoa.
So, yeah.
Oh, you talking Zoroastrians. It took my mind to outer space. That new telescope discovered elements, chemical elements, 200 light years away on a planet that's unidentified.
Yeah.
Is that cool?
It is.
It's like
so here's a piece, and you can Google this and look it up. We have within us, each of us, trace elements that cannot have come from our solar system.
Ooh. Okay.
They just couldn't have gotten here by the current understanding of mechanics. Nothing's close enough to have traveled this far. I don't know. We're all made of star stuff that's in the stars. That's not being woo-woo. That's a chemical reality. There's trace elements that contribute to life in ways that we don't understand. Because we're babies in the field of science. We're absolutely babies, and we're just really starting to understand. But I'll tell you, the ancients understood it at a gut level in ways that we are. It blows my mind every time I see it. There are so many traditions that just are right on. And I've always wanted to teach a course called The Psychology of Religion and take a look at the psychological principles that we see played out in the stories of scriptures. And look at...
That would be cool.
Yeah. And I think it'd be really cool to look at not just the Judeo-Christian or Abrahamic traditions, but also the Buddhist and the Hindu, right? Look at the Tao Te Ching. A lot of psychology in there about how to live your life and be positive about it and not only lead a good long life, but a happy, long life. And I'm not so much happy as peaceful content, which is slightly different.
Okay, what's the difference?
If you're at peace, then you might not be happy in the moment, but you're okay. You're okay with things. You're at peace with them. Because not everything in life is going to be positive. And the key is how to take the negative without letting it hurt you. How do you listen? Because here's the piece. When somebody gives you negative information, something that hurts, the key is to dive into it, not to take in the negativity, but to see what's the kernel of learning in that advice. What can I do? And in this Randy Pausch lecture that I mentioned earlier, he talks about somebody who said to him that others have this perception of you being arrogant, and their perceptions of you are going to prevent you from achieving what you can and what you want to. What can you do? What can we do to help change their perceptions? What a beautiful way to tell somebody, stop giving off that aura. Right? Stop giving off that aura. And if you've got really good friends, your friends can say, stop it. Right? But most people can't take a direct approach like that. It's got to be a little bit around the shoulder. But the other thing is that you need to listen to the good and the bad of everybody so that you can grow. Because you can. Every one of us can be better than we are today. And the more we continue to do that, we listen to the negative and the positive. The positive feels good, and there's good stuff in there. Right? There's encouragement to keep doing certain things. But the negative tells us where we're butting up against a boundary that's not healthy. And so it teaches us how to navigate that in life. We hurt people without realizing it all the time. All the time. You don't mean to, but you did something and it impacted somebody. And some of the negative information that we receive helps us undo some of that. There's a phrase in Judaism, chatati v'lo yadati. I sinned because I didn't know. I didn't realize it. But now that you've brought it to my attention and I'm aware of it, I see this blind spot, then I can make amends and I can shift my gaze enough so that that area is not a blind spot, so that I can really see it and I can, move forward with that.
And we all have blind spots.
We all have it. We have a physical blind spot. And you can tell where your physical blind spot is if you put a circle on a page and an X on the other, and you keep staring at the circle and you move it closer or farther. At some point, that X disappears. And that's the blind spot in your eye. We all have it. And the reason for that is because the back of the retina has a hole in it where the nerves connect into the brain. It's a physical hole in it. But our brains say, okay, we know what's nearby, and so it connects the dots and it makes it appear so that there's not this big gap in what you're looking at. And that's part of why you've got binocular vision, which is two eyes, so that it minimizes the amount of what you don't see. But at some point, you hit that blind spot, and you can test it. The other cool trick is to take that little dot, draw a straight line through that X that you have, and as the X disappears, you'll see that your brain makes that line continuous. It doesn't have a gap in it. It's continuous. So we really do fill in the blanks. And we do that. We do that with visual information. We do it with verbal information. We do it with touch information. We do it with every bit of sensory information that our body gets. And we talk about 5 senses, but the reality is that we have many more. We have a sense of body. As you're sitting there, you know where your body parts are. You can't imagine that away. You can't imagine your hand touching the ceiling if it's not. Right, so that's a real sense. It gives you information. Yes, it's related to the sense of touch, but it's its own piece. Because if we put you, right, that's what the deprivation tank has to get rid of. That's why they have to get away from anything that could give you some feedback. The other sense that we have is balance. Right, we have those wonderful little hairs in our ears that help contribute with that. And you might say, well, that's just a part of it's not a part of hearing. It's a different part. It's our sense of balance. And we know when it's messed up, just as we know when our eyes are foggy and we can't see. Right? So we know the different senses that we have. The other thing that's amazing are the people who are blind, but who can perceive almost physically parts of their world. And there are individuals who are like that. Right? There's blind painters.
I've met several musicians who they see the world better than we do.
Yeah. Well, because they're seeing it with different. Part of their brain actually is still lighting up. It's the part that our eyes connect into, but because our eyes flood that area with so much information, it numbs the other ways that our brain can bring in that information. But for people whose eyes don't work, the other ways of perceiving the world, the vibration, the magnetic, whatever, all the different things that are there, they can heighten that sensitivity and use them, develop those capabilities. We are amazing creatures. We are designed to function, and we're designed to all be different. We're designed to be unique individuals working together, because if we don't do that, we don't get the big picture. And so we need each other to get information that our own bodies can't collect. And so, as a news person, as a sports broadcaster, you're bringing in information to people that they can't see or hear directly.
I think the late Chick Hearn, the Lakers announcer, called it best, a word's eye view.
Yeah.
You paint the picture.
You paint a word's eye view. And isn't that the way? Think back to, Moses didn't have a cell phone. He didn't have video.
He had a tablet, though.
Yeah, he had two of them. It's kind of funny because there's a cartoon, and I keep meaning to get it into my lecture on religion, because it shows a picture of Moses coming down. It says, "I have a text message from God." But the cartoon has Moses holding two iPads, right?
Sure.
Right. And of course, there's a third one that Mel Brooks dropped. And we'll never know.
If folks have never seen that Mel Brooks movie,
History of the World, Part 1.
Go and take a look this weekend.
That one's worth bringing up and watching. It's a it's a piece of Mel Brooks that is just spectacular.
I was so fortunate to have been with him a bunch during the Dodgers old timers and Hollywood Star games. The man was just, and he never stopped. He was so funny. Funny. Wow.
Yeah, he was. And a challenge to work with, because he
Oh,
cracked people up on the set all the time.
Yeah.
There are people, Harvey Korman comes to
mind.
Oh,
Harvey, yeah.
There are people who they are so funny, so every ounce of their body. And I've got to imagine Robin Williams must have been the same way.
Tim Conway always talked about Harvey Korman. He just said...
Well, neither of them.
Well, yeah, but he said, thank goodness we had tape. Because he said, we could go back and look at this stuff and just cry forever laughing so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
the amount of spontaneous humor in those two beings. How amazing that Carol Burnett brought them together.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well,
she had an amazing cast on that show of hers. But I have to imagine they had to spend 3 or 4 times as long getting the takes.
Yeah, that show took a long time to produce.
Well, that's because the two of them couldn't.
Because they couldn't hold it together.
They couldn't. There are times that you see Carol just, really trying. Yeah. Right, so she's, doing this number because she doesn't want them to get the encouragement of her giggling.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
While she's trying to smack them behind the scenes and get them back on.
Oh, come on, we have a bit to finish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Whoa, that was some classic stuff too.
And it's the ad libs are often the pieces that make the movies. I'm thinking of Raiders of the Lost Ark, that scene where the guy's getting all ready to do everything, right? And the original script called for I'm forgetting his name.
Harrison?
Yeah, Harrison to
Harrison
to
Ford.
engage him in the battle, and instead he pulls out the gun and shoots him. Right, and that's an ad lib. That was an ad lib, and they kept it. And here's to the producers and directors who have the wisdom to keep those ad libs that are well worth keeping. Bride of Frankenstein has a lot of those ad libs from Madeline
College.
Oh, and
she was another nut.
She was another one. And for my Jewish friends out there, most of the ad libs are in Yiddish, so they make it through the censors because some of them would not if the censors had spoken Yiddish.
And there were censors back in those days, folks.
There were censors that listened and cut things out, but they did not speak. They clearly did not speak Yiddish because either that or they just figured that nobody else would understand. I'm not sure which, but there are things that slip through that were not allowed in the day and would have gotten an X rating today if they were understood. So.
Oh, gosh.
And that's for a discussion, not on the radio, folks, but you can ask me that question.
Now, the question is, did Moses have an iPad or was
or
he
an Android?
An Android.
That's a good question. Maybe one of each so that he could speak to everybody, because it says that it was in 70 languages, and that's a piece. So there's one of those biblical codes. When it says 70, that means the entire world. It was the perception that the world spoke 72 languages. So you'll either hear 70 or 72. Where obviously we speak many more than 72 languages, but it's a number that means everything. So for the holiday of Sukkot, that will be here next Friday, because 25% of all Jewish holidays happen in between Rosh Hashanah and
in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we've got like 3 holidays, boom, 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 right together. 4. A lot of Jewish holidays happen this time of year. And so with that, and now I forgot what I was going to say about it. Oh, good. So, so for Sukkot, which is the holiday coming next week that I'll talk about next week, it says that 70 oxen were slaughtered and sacrificed, which means barbecued, folks. It means everybody ate them. There's no other reason to kill 70 oxen, but other than a big feast in the city.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so for the vegans, Jerusalem smelled like dead animals burning, I'm sure.
Wait a minute. I'm sure. Somehow, I can't imagine vegans back in that day.
I'm sure there were some.
Okay.
For one reason or another. There certainly were among the Hindus and Buddhists, and a number of different traditions have had vegans all along. And some are more or less vegetarian. And, of course, they didn't call themselves vegans. They just didn't eat animal.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't eat flesh. And I think
But again, that all goes back to, what no fish, no pork. Well, there was no refrigeration back then to store that.
And pork doesn't jerky. It cures. Which is one of the reasons for curing, for making hams and bacon and things like that. It's to cure it so you don't need refrigeration. But beef and real fish, as in those that have fins and scales, will both dry out and be edible. They'll be jerkied. Jerky is quite easy. It's just drying it out, and then it's a little chewier. Yeah, you can roast it or not and jerky it after it's cooked, but you can't do that with pork. Pork will rot. And we don't exactly know what manna was, but it rotted overnight. If you tried to keep it, it couldn't be kept. It's an interesting piece, right? It would get maggots, except for Friday. Friday you could collect a double portion, possibly because they collected it late in the day to have it for Shabbat. They collected in the morning and they collected at night, and the stuff they collected toward evening right before Shabbat lasted. So maybe they could have done that other days as well. Who knows? Again, MSNBC and Fox News were not there to have competing videos. Somebody said it well to me, and this was at Kaiser, one of my colleagues. We were talking about I had made that same quip that I like to say about MSNBC and Fox News not being there. And their retort was, yeah, give them 30 minutes of news and you'll have two very different stories.
Yeah, that's true.
Because they definitely both have an agenda.
Yeah.
But the other side to that is we need a right and a left wing to fly, folks. We need those opposing views, because in the diversity of views is where we really start to learn. If we're looking at something and we only have one perspective, we start to lose sight that just because I'm right doesn't mean you're wrong. And just because you're right doesn't mean I'm wrong. We just have different perspectives.
What in the world is happening in Israel? I mean,
that's that sound that
you talk about two, divergent opinions. There seems to be one that's trying to dominate everything over there.
That's a reflection of what's going on in some ways here.
Kind of a Trumpism type thing.
I wasn't going to go there, but you can draw the conclusions you want to.
But are the Orthodox ones? There seem to be, so you look at the protesters, and of course they're young on both sides.
Yeah.
But the Orthodox ones seem to be the one that are really pushing that.
Well, the liberals almost never go to violence. Look back at the stories. The liberals almost never go to violence.
Okay.
It's almost never a liberal person who shoots up a crowd. Psychology. And I think part of that is because liberals are forward-looking, by definition, and so they're looking for things to get better. And conservatives are backward-looking. They want to restore things. They want to bring things to the good old days. And so that difference in vantage point changes the hostility, the frustration, and the fear.
Netanyahu the other day at the UN said that he was hoping for another agreement with the Saudis, which I would think would be a good thing.
That would be a good thing. Although the Saudis are not known for being forward-looking.
You think?
As I've said to my class, the only thing worse than having the Saudis as allies is having them as enemies. All right, they're a very formidable force in the world, and we just have to be aware of that. They have been ruled by one party, one group, one family for a long time, and that power is deeply entrenched, and it maintains itself by some of those methods that we might not encourage. And I guess that's as far as I'll go.
I get it.
They are our allies, and there are parts of... And Saudi's changing, too. Saudi Arabia is changing big time. They are a very modern society. There's an interesting video that I show some of my classes, which is a walk in a Saudi park and a walk in a shopping center. They've got some incredibly beautiful shopping centers in their cities. And they've got some amazing technology. They actually host technology conferences. One of the things that they made a point of showing President Trump when he was there is all their technology. Right, to let him if he saw it, how far ahead they are. And we're maybe worried about Russian technology. We need to be worried about Saudi technology too.
Well, the Saudis, the Japanese, the Koreans are light years ahead of us technologically.
Yeah. Well, especially when we give our government the oldest pieces of technology to work with. Hello.
Yeah.
Except for the NSA. As one of my friends says, BCC, various government agencies. Because
yeah, with the hand crank computers. Yeah.
Well, and some of them don't have hand crank computers. Some of them. All right. The amount of video that's out there today is just incredible. It's not just the stuff of NCIS. There really is a ton of video. We've seen it here in Port St. Lucie, where surveillance video is used to help identify
Mm-hmm.
perpetrators. The illusion that you're not on camera all the time is an illusion. Most parking lots have surveillance cameras today. It's only the old ones that don't, that have there was a time when you put up fake ones because people couldn't afford the real cameras. But, look at Mr. Mevo. This is something that streams continually.
All over the world.
All over the world.
Sure.
And, they're not expensive, folks. I don't know what a Mevo's going for now, but I'm going to guess it's just a couple hundred. I haven't priced them lately, but it's just not much.
Well, and I think about our old news cameras, or
The bigger than you, yeah.
$50,000 or $60,000 a pop.
Yeah.
And
And I've got more power for a drop in the bucket in this little 2-inch by 3-inch by 1-inch camera.
They took us on a tour in Palmdale of the FAA's computer systems. Now, these computers are controlling everything west of the Rockies. And it was these huge, old IBM units. And there were like 3 buildings.
Yeah.
And, you're thinking,
put, go get 3 Macs or 3 iPads or and replace it. Yeah, it was very sobering for me a few years back when I looked at the Apple IIe that we had just purchased and realized that it had as much active RAM as the IBM 360 I had originally cut my teeth on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, just think about the astronauts today, or you joke about, that they can hold something in their hand that has more computer power than the space shuttle did when it first started to go up into space.
We have always pushed technology. The SR-71 would be a totally different plane today. It was built with what essentially were rebar, just instruments that couldn't handle what we asked that plane to do. And so they had buckets that would collect fuel that seeped out of the airplane, because in order to fly at altitude, it couldn't keep itself together on the ground. Think about this a minute, folks. Right, this is a plane that needs buckets to catch its pieces. They pour it back in through a sieve so that junk doesn't get in. But, if we built the SR-71 today, and who knows if we have, BCC, various government agencies, and or maybe we don't need it because we've got so many satellites out there. Right? We do have satellites, and satellites have long been able to read newspapers over people's shoulders. That's not new.
Oh, sure. Well, and what amazes me, and every time I see it, Elon Musk's rocket that comes back and lands. I just think, and it was like the one the other night was the 17th trip that rocket had made and successfully landed on the barge again. And I'm thinking, well, that never would have happened 30 years ago.
Yeah. Technology is moving so fast, and we're getting so much, and the rate of change is on a steady increase. It's mind-boggling as to, is there an ultimate limit to how fast we can acquire knowledge? Will we hit a brick wall someday?
But mentally, can we handle all of this stuff?
Only if we start working together.
Ooh, working together.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
Yeah, because the multiple brain power, right? That's how the computers are working so effectively. And that's one of the things that viruses do, is they capture some of that capacity on little tiny computers and network it together to work problems and solve things.
It's amazing.
There are computers that don't even know they're working on that. Well, the computer knows it, but the human sitting next to it doesn't.
Naturally. Oh, brother.
Right. So it's in the neural network. When we learn to communicate because I'm convinced that we can communicate other than just verbally and visually. I think there's other communication.
You talking telepathic?
Something along those lines.
That would be cool.
We are getting better and worse at reading people.
Mm.
Right? Dogs have certainly mastered that to a really high level. Anybody who has a dog knows that they have a cray in their head that's analyzing everything you do. That's how they know when you're going to work and you're not going to work, and that's how they know that it's Friday or whatever.
And they know when you're down in the dumps.
Boy, do they! They're just they know that their survival is tied to your state, and they're very sensitive to it. And it's interesting for me to watch my dogs watch me, because it's a psychologist in me. I get a kick out of that. They also know when I'm on the phone and when I'm on my tablet and when I'm on the computer, and I get a different behavior. So with all that, we come back to this memory that this is the weekend of Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is Sunday night and Monday. You can check the website. We're still register. And, a chance to start the page, your last chance to do things to make it great. And so this is Rabbi Shafir Loeb. This has been Ask a Rabbi for Congregation Eitz Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast.
Now, what time do you get together on Sunday?
We get together at 7 p.m.
Okay.
7 p.m.
And through Monday, right?
Right. That's correct. That's correct.
All right.
Okay.
Have a good week.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie. Talk of the Treasure Coast, webcaster to the world on TuneIn.